Hey everyone, my name is REDRUP. This is the It's Not a Phase podcast, and on this episode I am joined by Nathan Barley Phillips, who is a Senior A&R rep for Nuclear Blast and SharpTone Records. We talk about what A&R is, how Barley got into the industry, his time running Basick Records, what he looks for when scouting and signing a band, advice for those wanting to get a job in A&R, and loads more. Now, if you enjoyed this or any other episode of the podcast and you want to show your support, there's a few ways that you can do that. Number one, leave a rating and review wherever you're listening to this. It takes just a few seconds and it really does help. Number two, share this on your social media, whether that be Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever. Or number three, if you want to go the extra mile, you can pay a little bit each month to join the Patreon, and in return you'll get access to episodes early along with some other perks. Or you can pick up some merch from the store. All the links to that and the podcast socials where you can follow us can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. And now with all that out of the way, let's jump right into this week's episode of It's Not a Phase. What's up everybody? Thank you for joining me on this episode of It's Not a Phase, where I'm joined by Nathan Barley Phillips, who's the Senior A&R rep for Nuclear Blast Group. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks, Zach. All good, thank you.
So let's start off with the basics. For those who are kind of unfamiliar, what is an A&R rep for a label, and can you kind of explain, what it is and very briefly what the role entails in general?
I can try. It's interesting actually because it kind of means different things to different people. But for me personally, I take a little more of a kind of old school traditional approach. For me, the A&R person at any company is essentially the person that is responsible for bringing in new talent to the company, but not only bringing it in beforehand, assessing whether it would be a good business opportunity for the company, for the label. But once it's in, my personal view is that actually it's that person or that the A&R's responsibility to run the whole thing through the company, through every department, to make sure that every department understands what the band's message is, what the artist's vision is for their music, and just to make sure that the project is kind of fully set up in the right way, and that everyone understands who this band is, what their message is, what they've got to say, and just for us to kind of amplify that in as big a way as possible. So it really ranges from, my day job really kind of ranges from a lot of spreadsheet work, a lot of budget work. Yeah, it's disgusting. It's the amount of work I have to do in spreadsheets on budgets and things is insane sometimes. But equally, it's a big part of the job. A lot of people sometimes think A&R is just like spotting bands and telling other people about it.
Yeah.
That's like the tip of the iceberg. It's a great fun part of the job, but actually like there's a lot more involved in that, from negotiating with management companies to coordinating with lawyers and legal teams, to presenting a business case to a finance department, to very, very, sometimes mundane. I actually find it really interesting, but it's definitely not for everyone. To then, kind of getting through all of the kind of the process parts of the job, to then switching the other side of your brain on and being really creative, with the rest of your creative teams, the marketing people, the product people, the sales people, everything else, and really just kind of conveying that message about what it is you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a long-winded answer to your first question, but yeah, I think it's any opportunity I get to kind of demystify this stuff, I'll always take, because a lot of people just kind of either don't know or have their own idea of it and whatever, and actually, my version of it maybe a little different to other people's, but fundamentally it's about the artist and their songs, and I'm here. That's what A&R is, artists and repertoire, and I'm here to make sure that when I bring an artist and their repertoire into the company, that it's fully serviced and that everyone understands what they have to do.
Well, I guess it doesn't help when you have those kind of misconceptions that come up on films and stuff, where an A&R scout is basically, you go to a show, they perform live pretty well, and then you say, okay, you're signed. And then that's kind of Yeah.
That is literally 5% of the conversation. And I think the reason is that part is always in the films is because actually someone staring at a spreadsheet for 5 hours is probably not going to make a great film. But that's definitely the side of the coin that you never see. But yeah, I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I love going to shows. I love, finding new bands. I love speaking to people like yourself and taking recommendations of what you've been listening to and what you're hearing and whatever. Like all of that part still excites me as much as it did when I was a teenager, finding new bands, and like my mates will be like, "Oh my God, have you heard this?" And I'll be like, oh, "No, what's that? Let me borrow that," and whatever. And it's like, I still get that sort of same excitement about it. And that is, it's a very important part of the role. But I think the thing that I've realized as I've kind of definitely as I've got older and done this for longer is that you have to be very clear and very clever about separating the things out that you are excited about on a personal level and then the things that you think make good business sense.
Yeah.
Because those two things can be really different sometimes. So.
You've got to excel in spreadsheets, basically.
Yes. That's pretty much it. Yeah. No one's going to want to join B&A&R by the end of this podcast. That's for sure.
That's your goal for this conversation.
100%. That's my goal.
So I guess obviously it differs every kind of week or even like day to day, but generally is there kind of like a day to day routine that you follow? Like, do you do a particular thing on one day that's kind of like the priority? Like, obviously with Friday, it's New Music Friday. I don't know if that kind of factors into what you do.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. What I would say is though 100% no 2 days are the same. This is the type of role, the type of job that you really are kind of reactive and flexible to kind of what is around you and what the demands of you might be at any one time. I think that I try to, and again, this is as I've kind of, I guess, sort of got a little older, is I try to be a little structured with myself so that I have, just some kind of idea of what I'm going to be doing from one day to the next. Because this is definitely a job where you could quite easily fly by the seat of your pants and just, it could be chaos. It could be absolute chaos because there's so many things happening at any one time that you need to respond to or that you need to work out or figure out with, the people you're working with. You definitely need to you need to build some stuff in. On a personal level, I try to kind of keep like Mondays will be like a pretty heavy admin day for me. That's the time when I'm trying to kind of verify deals. I'm working probably a lot with, putting deals together in our internal system, going backwards and forwards with the finance team on budgets and on numbers. And I try to kind of keep calls, meetings, gigs. Naturally, like less tends to happen in that area on a Monday.
Right.
So it just seems like a kind of a good day for me to do that sort of stuff so that I know that I'm not going to have to, when I'm needed on like, when stuff's kicking off on a Friday, I don't want to be thinking about, I've still got to do this budget or I've still got to put this, put this deal together or whatever. So yeah, there is a little bit of structure to it, but it's kind of self-imposed. It's not like, it's not that the job dictates it. It's just, I find it easier if you give it some semblance of order because otherwise it will literally be chaos. So.
Well, I guess especially with a label like Nuclear Blast, because, there's such a big roster and there's so many bands doing stuff at the same time. And then not only that, if you're in the Nuclear Blast group, you've got Nuclear Blast Records, SharpTone and Horizon Empire. So that's 3 different labels there. Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. So, I work across Nuclear Blast and a little bit of SharpTone as well. So actually, a Rising Empire was with us up until a couple of years ago, but they're now, that label brand is now with another company. But it very much did start as a sub label of Nuclear Blast when it was first, when the guys kind of first came up with the idea for it. But yeah, so the main kind of brands that we're running are obviously Nuclear Blast and SharpTone. And there's a lot of stuff happening with that. But I think the great thing about the way that we're set up, and especially with our parent company Believe, is that we have a really great staff. Everyone here is a kind of specialist in what they do. And, we're very, very lucky in that regard. And I've been on the other side of the fence where I've worked in very, very small teams and we've had to kind of pick up 2 or 3 and sometimes more roles with over one person. But here, we're very lucky that we have quite a robust staff and everyone here is like really specific in a very specific area with their job. So what that means is it means that we can
handle a large number of releases because we're not in a situation where we're having to, wear 5 caps at once and try and make things happen. So yeah, so we're quite lucky in that regard. It's busy, like definitely. I guess it's a nice problem to have. There's a lot of great music out there, and we just want to put it out for people to hear.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, not a bad problem to have.
No, definitely not.
I don't know how involved you are in terms of on the SharpTone side, so that this question might not even be kind of relevant to you, but how can you kind of decide when you take on a new signing, which label it would fall under? Like what kind of process goes on there?
That's a really good question, actually, and it's a question that we are kind of we re-identify within our own internal teams quite regularly as the market changes and as kind of things change, from territory to territory or from kind of subgenre to subgenre. But yeah, I think it's SharpTone has definitely a kind of propensity to be a little more kind of forward facing with that kind of more commercial sound. There's some really great stuff on there. Obviously, we just did, the Don Broco record and amazing stuff from Holding Absence and Loathe and everything else. It's definitely a hotbed for new talent that definitely has, potential for a more kind of commercial approach, which is something that is kind of really in the label's DNA. The SharpTone's head, a guy called Sean Keith, his mission with that was to kind of carve out a music, like this kind of music culture for the next generation of heavy music fans. So that's kind of what it's steeped in. But it's worth noting that actually Sean, he also happens to be the head of A&R for the US for Nuclear Blast in the US. So our teams are very, very closely aligned, and there's constant discussion, certainly weekly, if not daily, about certain bands and certain projects. And it really just kind of, we try and make those decisions based on what's best for the artist in terms of, where they're based, what market we're trying to target, for any particular band. And we also try to look at the strengths that we have within our own teams, within Nuclear Blast and within SharpTone, because we have different staff. We have some staff that cross over on both, like myself, but we also have some staff that are, dedicated SharpTone staff or dedicated Nuclear Blast staff in certain areas. And it's also kind of for us to understand who the best people would be to work on this band to deliver the best results as well. So everything is a consideration on that front.
So in terms of how you kind of got into A&R and even the music industry as a whole, how did that kind of start? How did you get your first foot in the door, I guess?
I was promoting shows in my local town in conjunction with the local university. And it kind of all happened at the same time, really. There was a kind of real influx of like really good local bands that were kind of coming through at the time. And through the contacts I kind of made as a promoter, I'd met a lot of people at labels, a lot of agents, also some press people. What I noticed is that some of these bands were kind of struggling a little bit to really kind of get out there and make those kind of connections and kind of build their network. And, some were amazing at, very, very good, hands-on DIY bands that were kind of forging their own path. But for me, I think I just kind of saw it as an opportunity, and I toyed with the idea of running a record label for a while, like not ages, but it was like, it just felt like it was the right time to do something. So I don't know what possessed me, but I decided I was going to set up my own record label. And I mean, it was proper DIY, but I managed to put a business case together. I went to the bank and borrowed some money, which scared the absolute shit out of me. 2 years in, I quit my day job because I was determined that I was going to make it a full-time thing, which at the time, I have a family, I had a mortgage. I had a very good job and a company car. And I have no idea. Basically. Yeah, I have no idea to this day why I made those decisions, but I'm really glad I did. And then we started kind of promoting a lot of those bands that were kind of coming through the scene. We started off putting some compilations together, and we released Enter Shikari's first kind of commercial single. We then signed a really young band from Milton Keynes called Fell Silent, who went on to form Tesseract and Monuments and Heart of a Coward, various other things. So we were kind of in that scene sort of very early on. And yeah, I was just trying to trust my instincts really, in the same way that I was trying to think about who would be a good booking for a local show, who do the local audience and friends of mine and kids and whatever, who do they want to come and see? I was just like, okay, whose records would people buy? I was just trying to be quite analytic about it, and just kind of ask that same sort of question. So yeah, we just formed something around that, and I'm still here. So
definitely worked.
I guess it did.
Yeah. So what was the first release that you worked A&R on? Was it the Shikari one, or?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So it was that single. And then we kind of built a compilation of, it was actually 12 UK bands that were kind of up and coming. And what I did was I basically sent that compilation to everyone that I knew at, all the music magazines, all the music radio stations that were specialists in rock music, sent it out to the agents that I knew, the promoters that I knew. And then obviously the bands spread the word about the compilation and stuff as well. And yeah, just got a really good response to that, with a lot of people saying, wow, didn't realize there was so much talent, the undiscovered talent in this country for this kind of burgeoning scene. And this was like 2005. So yeah, I kind of pushed on with that, did another one probably about 6 or 9 months later with a kind of second set that was a little harder, it was a little heavier. And then, I think the first kind of full artist release that we did would have been Fell Silence EP. But then we very quickly moved into their album, Bury Tomorrow's debut album, and kind of like a whole bunch of other stuff like that, really.
Right. Okay. So you're talking about obviously Basick Records there, and
sorry, I should have mentioned that. Yeah, Basic Records. Yeah, that's right.
And then you did was it you co-founded Hold Tight, which was kind of like obviously they're still going now, but at the time it's kind of like helping the publicity side of Basick. Was that right?
Yeah, 100%. And what was really interesting about that is that, so this actually links to what I was mentioning a minute ago. Whilst I was working with Fell Silent, Akul, the guitar player, had a side project that he was doing at the time, which was just a kind of bedroom project that he was looking for musicians for. That project was called Tesseract. And one of the guys that he'd found to play guitar was a guy called James Monteith. We connected, hit it off, really pretty much instantly. And I found out that his day job, he was working for a consumer PR company, and he approached me and just said, who's doing PR for Basick Records? And at the time we were doing it in house. He just said, I would love to do it. He said, I've got a day job. I do consumer PR. That's my day job. But he said, I want to get into music PR. I would love to come and do PR for Basick Records. So I can't even remember how it happened. Maybe I put him on a trial. Probably not. I probably just said, yeah, sure. Come and do it. So he started doing PR for Basick Records. And then as that kind of moved on, I think probably about a year and a half into him doing that, we had other bands that were kind of outside of that. We weren't working at the label that were asking us if we could do PR for them. And it was a really interesting kind of opportunity because it kind of coincided with James wanting to do more PR outside of what he was already doing with Basick Records. So I think we were in the basement of Garlic and Shots in Soho, and we drunk a lot. And we decided to form Hold Tight PR in there and then in the basement of Garlic and Shots. And again, rest is history. I guess, the company's been, I think that was 2010. So I was a partner in Hold Tight for 8 years. I left, 2017, 2018, something like that. But over those 8 years, we grew the company from me and James. We brought Lisa on board, I think about a year later as another director. And then we hired, account managers, Matt and Hannah. And to be honest, those guys, have gone from strength to strength. I kind of bowed out of it in the end. I didn't have as much time on my hands to kind of focus on the PR stuff. A&R has always been my thing from day one. So but it's an interesting story how the whole thing is kind of, it's very interwoven, and people's kind of journey through that story is everyone's very close because of it. So
yeah, and it's you say it kind of just happened as well as when you took out the loan to start Basick. And I think what a lot of people don't realize who want to get into the music industry but haven't had the chance to yet, or don't quite know how to, is, and I obviously don't mean any disrespect for this, but a lot of people just kind of like wing it and just hope for the best, because you've got to kind of make your own path sometimes.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think one of the things that I've tried to do over the past few years, less so since I've joined Nuclear Blast, but more kind of Yeah, 2017 to 2020. I came off the back of working with AIM, the Association of Independent Music, and through that, and kind of at the end of that period, I tried to do some work with colleges and kind of students that were kind of studying music and music business and whatever, and trying to kind of have conversations with people who are just hoping to kind of come into the industry. And it's something I'm quite passionate about because, I didn't study anything to do with music other than the study of like all the posters on my wall, all the magazines I read, all the liner notes I read in my album covers. I lived and breathed music. And that was probably the biggest kind of course I could have kind of ever really taken in terms of my music education. And I've been really keen to make sure that people know that, if you're studying music and you're studying a degree and everything else, that's like, of course, that's fantastic. And you're going to learn a lot. And I've worked with a lot of students that are kind of doing courses in those areas. But equally, there are plenty of people that work in the music industry that are here because they are passionate about music and they are intelligent and they've got great skills and great, experience and expertise to be able to give back. And yeah, I'm always keen to make sure people realize that there's not one way, there's not like a magic key that you need, to kind of get into the industry. If you're not confident of going out there and starting your own business and hustling for yourself, there's lots and lots of other ways in, and there's lots of other companies out there that have already done that. And maybe you would be a good asset for them and, just go and knock on some doors and be friendly and show people what you can do. Like that's the main thing for me.
So when it comes to scouting a band nowadays, especially, I imagine COVID kind of changed things because you couldn't literally go and see a band live or go and meet them in person. What's kind of what you look for? How do you go about scouting for a new act?
It's actually a real mix. It's interesting because we've kind of got to the stage now where I'm hearing about a band way before I've ever seen them live in a lot of cases. And sometimes that's just down to kind of geography. I'm scouting bands at the moment, literally worldwide, and that's a big net to cast. So, the chances of you kind of seeing a band live sometimes can be very small. I try to set myself the rule though of where possible, I will always try and see a band live before I get to the stage of making an offer if I'm interested. And that's really just for me to like, I don't think you can ever really fully get the full vibe of a band until you've heard them do it, until you've seen them do it. And I just think it's something that has been really important to me through my career, definitely, where some of the best things that I've done, I've been really pleased that I kind of took the time, to make sure that I fully understood what it was I was getting into, both on a musical level, but also on a personal level as well. These are people that are hopefully going to trust you with their art. And that's a very personal thing. It can be. And you want to make sure that in best case scenario that you are, happy and confident about the relationship that you're going to have with these people. They're placing a lot of trust in you. I have to respect that. But equally, I have to know that I can add value, that I can take their art and do something with it that they maybe couldn't do themselves. So when you get into a quite a intense relationship like that with somebody, I find it helps to know a little bit about who you're getting into bed with.
Especially you're going to work with them for so long.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the thing for me. The best circumstances I always have is when you work with a band for multiple records or over a period of a certain amount of years, because then, you really you find you can kind of properly get into a groove with a certain band, or you can get into a groove with working with something and really start to deliver on that. So it's really important that not only the music is great, but, ideally you have a good synergy with those people as well. You understand what it is they're trying to achieve and that you can hopefully help them achieve it.
And how does it kind of differ when, you take on a more established band, kind of like, Bleed From Within or Devil Stole a Soul, who I know you worked with for a bit with Basic Records as well, in comparison to a new budding band? Like, I think you took on Profiler for SharpTone before they played a show. What do you kind of like weigh up? Because I guess obviously with the established band, kind of what you're getting to an extent because they've already got records out, they've already played live for X amount of years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is a different approach. I guess the most extreme version that I've got of that right now is that I'm A&R for In Flames, and I'm literally working on putting, their new record out, start of next year. And that is a band obviously that's been around for a good while now. They're at a certain level where they don't need as much input from me about, kind of what they should do and, how to operate and things to look out for and, and everything else. So my involvement with that is really about much more about kind of getting the nuts and the bolts of the deal done, making sure that we're working on a creative level that the band are happy with, that they're working with the right video directors, that we are setting the campaign up properly. I will go as far as, making suggestions about track listing for the record, making selections about singles that I think we should be working with to promote the record. But in terms of kind of the rest of their business, like they've got that down. They have great manager working with a great management company. They know who they are. They've been a band for a long time. So there's less input needed from me on a lot of those other things.
Right.
And then you go right down right across to the other side of the scale where you mentioned Profiler. That is a band that I signed during lockdown for SharpTone. Interestingly, again, all these stories are linked. I was down in BIM, Bristol, doing some lectures there, working with some students. And one of the staff members, they sent me an email afterwards and just said, look, I never do this, but there's a band that, these guys have come out of BIM Bristol. They're phenomenal. You really need to check them out. I will listen to stuff, to people that are really going out on the limb and putting their reputation on the line to recommend a band. So I listened, demos were great, like needed some work, but I heard something in there and I was like, that's really interesting. There's definitely something in there that is worth a look. But yeah, like you said, it was lockdown. It was a strange time to be living through. But actually there was a brief period where things kind of opened up again before they got shut down again during lockdown. Okay. And I actually went down to Bristol again to do something at BIM. And the guys actually organized like a closed rehearsal space where I basically went in and into their rehearsal space and listened and watched them play a full set just for me. And that for me was a really good indicator of, where the band is at, what they can do, what they can't do, how it matched up to the demos, and also a good opportunity to talk to them about their ambition and about the songs and about everything else. And I can hand on heart say that had we not had that opportunity for me to sit in a room with them, probably wouldn't have signed them, even though the demos were great. But yeah, so that's kind of how that stuff happens sometimes. But going to a band like that, this literally is their first rodeo. They're just putting some new songs out. We're going to be working on the debut album, but that band requires a lot more of my time and energy and input because it's just natural. They haven't done it before. And it's really important for me that whenever I take a chance and work with a young band like that I give them the space and the time that they need to grow and to develop. I've seen so many instances where a new band will come out. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of pressure. And it can be really difficult for that band to live up to that hype and live up to that pressure, especially once that initial kind of impact has gone from like a track or, a 3-track EP that everyone went wild for or, whatever. And it's like, man, I want bands I work with to have a career. I don't want them to have 6 months of success.
Yeah.
And then no one remembers who they were. Like that for me is not a sustainable business model.
Yeah.
So I'm just really, I guess I'm super protective and super keen to make sure that stuff like that, like it has the space, it has the time, and I'm doing that now with another project as well, which I'll announce next year. We'll announce the signing, but I signed it like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago,
right.
Into Nuclear Blast, but we haven't announced it yet. And I don't intend on announcing it until it's ready to be announced, until the band is like, we're doing some work behind the scenes. We're planting lots of seeds. We're doing lots of things, but I don't want to put the band under that pressure, like that's not the right thing to do. So yeah. So it's hopefully there's an illustration there of the sliding scale of like what it can be like between, like you say, established stuff and brand new stuff.
Yeah. And what do you have like a preference on each one? Or I guess it's just a bit of a variety and a bit different for you.
Yeah, no real preference for me. I think, I enjoy working with, In Flames just as much as I like working with Profiler. It's like, for me, it's about the music. It's about making a difference. It's about, like I said before, really kind of enhancing and adding value to what they already do. That for me is the key thing. And if I don't, and I'm very strict with myself. If I hear a great band and I'm like, man, this, this slaps. If I really don't think I can be the person, or that I'm not the right person, I won't put myself forward for it. I won't try and make it happen. It needs to feel right, and I need to know that I can do something with it.
I suppose it's kind of difficult for you to get the balance then as well. You mentioned earlier that you don't want to really mess with their art too much because, it's their art, and, you kind of take them on because you enjoy that art in the first place, but you also want to guide them so they get more growth. So yeah, I guess that's kind of hard to balance how much input you can actually give.
Yeah, it can be. And you also need to be respectful and mindful of how much input does the band want you to give as well. Because I'm always here, if somebody asks me the question, or somebody asks for my advice or my guidance or whatever, I will always give it, but I won't, kind of overtly throw myself onto, something or somebody and, kind of say, oh, well, you need to do it this way because it's my way or the highway or whatever. It's like, that's not how I work. And I don't believe it is the right way to work. But I think, I even have these conversations with bigger bands where we'll have a huge band that will come to us and will say, okay, well, we think these tracks would be the ones we want to work with, for singles to promote the record. And if I agree, I'll say, yeah, great. That sounds, perfect. We're completely aligned. But if I don't agree, and I think that actually we'll have a better opportunity to market the record, reach more people, create more buzz, achieve more sales in the long run, then I'm not doing my job properly if I don't speak up and don't suggest that actually I think we could get better results by doing it a slightly different way. So in that case, I'll say, well, you have to stand your ground and give the reasoning. Of course, you need to justify why you're making these choices, or disagreeing with what, a huge band who knows who they are, that they want to choose a different single or whatever. So yes, but that's part of the job. It's really important that you're part of that and that you give a good account of yourself and do the best job possible.
And the way you mentioned earlier, the way that you took on Profiler, like sounds kind of like a very unconventional way as to how you would normally find and take on a band. Has there ever been a band that you've come across without intending to take on that you eventually did? And does that tend to be when you go out and see them supporting someone live that you intended to see, or that you hear on Spotify, you stumble across that way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing that all the time. I've definitely, I've seen lots of bands live where I've been like, had I not seen them live, then I'm not sure, and it probably would have been because they were support to a band that I did go to see.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, wow, or things. And this is another thing that I try and do at festivals where, I'll go to festivals, and at any one time we might have, a ton of bands, a ton of our own bands playing. And of course I'll go and see their sets. But what I try to do is in between those sets is I will make a point of choosing at least one band that I've never heard of, that I have no preconception of who they are, and just go watch. And just goes, and I think the last time I did that was at Arctangent, a few weeks back. And I saw some great stuff. Like there's some stuff in there that I'll probably never work with, but there's one or two things that came out of that where, again, I hadn't listened to it beforehand. I was just like, maybe I'd seen the name, or the name looked interesting to me, or it was on at the right time for when I wanted to go get some lunch. And I thought, I'll go get some lunch and go watch that band I have no idea of anything about. But yeah, so I'll do that. But we work on the flip side. We work with a lot of data as well. So we'll analyze a lot of trends within the genre. We'll identify things that are happening potentially in other territories. Maybe there's a cool scene that's happening in Japan or South America or Australia or whatever. And we'll, of course, do deep dive research projects into each of those territories. So some of it can be analytical, some of it can be serendipity, some of it can be, and I think if you're kind of in the right places and you're having the right conversations and you're, like I said, looking in the right places, then you can definitely find some super, super interesting things. I think if there's an example of that, where something like that has happened in the past, it's probably when I signed Sleep Token, Basick Records. The band had put some tracks out as a kind of self-released EP. I'd heard it and I thought it was pretty good. And then there was similar thing with the Profiler thing. It was like, there's something in there, but it's not fully realized yet. And it was like, okay, yeah, they're playing this show. It was like it was a warm up somewhere. it was definitely not the show. If you go to a Sleep Token show now, it was definitely not that show.
Yeah.
But again, like that's my job. That's my job to sort of see something and say, okay, this is where it's at now, but realize and understand that it's not the finished thing and that it's got a journey. It's got a long way to go to being fully realized. And it is my job to spot that and try to come up with a, strategy for that. And to be honest, that was really good fun. That was really exciting to kind of work on that, that EP that we put out, and to really sort of start to get the band noticed, in other areas, and to kind of help to formulate like what this thing is that you now see. So I think that's probably a good example.
I guess Sleep Token is quite a strange one as well, isn't it? Because obviously the whole idea is you're not meant to know who they are, so there's going to be NDAs involved.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there are now. There wasn't at the time.
Yeah, I imagine it's a bit more strict now, but
yeah, definitely. But that's been great to see, to see that band and that whole thing just really kind of grow over the last few years. It's come a very long way, since I first got involved and saw it and helped to release some material. And that's just on a kind of fan level, that's just super exciting to see. Stoked for that, definitely.
Yeah. And now look at the tours they've just announced with band like North Lane, who are acting as support, which is crazy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And again, more power to them. I think they've got a lot of life. There's a lot of life left in that band. There's a lot of markets that they're still yet to hit properly. And so, superb amount of talent in that band, which was the thing I spotted, in those early days. I was just like, it's very, very raw. It's not fully realized, but that, what they're doing, that guy's voice, super interesting, need to work on it. And I mentioned this project that we'll announce next year. That's the similar type vibe that I've got for this new project that we'll do, right, where it's just like found this thing in the depths of Bandcamp. There was just like, what is this? It was super underproduced, almost kind of noise at some point. And I was like, there is something very interesting happening with that. So yeah. Fingers crossed. We'll see.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
I guess it must be difficult, kind of, you mentioned this new signing that, you can't mention, but holding on for it for 2 years and you can't say a word about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely grown patient, as the years have gone on, and I've known when the right time, and more importantly, known when the wrong time is sometimes to do certain things. And again, having a conversation with the people involved, they're not interested in overnight success. They want to have a career as songwriters. I'm very, very lucky that they trust in me, and the people that I work with to help them achieve that. So, part of the strategy is that we take our time, we build it out in the right way. We keep plugging it, we keep making sure that people are aware of it, but, incrementally, and just kind of keep building this thing up. I want everyone to know about this band. Believe me, I really do. And that's my mission, but it's a long-term goal, not a short-term goal. So,
like you say, timing's important.
Yeah, definitely. 100%.
So you've briefly mentioned it in, some of the previous questions I've asked so far, but once you've found some talent, you've signed it on, all the documents have been signed and all that's gone ahead, what parts does the A&R do from there up until, and even after a record's gone out, I suppose?
Yeah, definitely. I think that will vary from case to case. And I think that varies dependent on the setup that you have at the label or at the company, that you're in. When I was doing A&R with my own label, I had a team, a team of people, but it was a very, very small team, literally just a handful of people. And they were all great, but we were having to really kind of double up. And actually I was probably also doing product and project management, at the same time as, and coordinating, not doing PR, but coordinating the PR and coordinating digital marketing and, coordinating retail opportunities and like all of this other stuff, which isn't necessarily strictly A&R. But then, here at Nuclear Blast and SharpTone, again, like I said earlier, I'm very lucky that we have specialists now, or I have specialists now in all of those areas. And ultimately that, I'll be honest, like they're the people that make me look good. So, because they're, genuinely like some of the best I've ever worked with in my whole career. But the beauty of it is that when I bring a band in and yeah, contracts are done, and really it's up to me to bring the band in and bring in the record that everyone here is going to work on. And that is like when I would say probably kind of 75% of my work is done. But there you've got that kind of remaining 25% that kind of sees you across the release campaign to ultimately make sure that everything is on track, that, that the budget is being spent in the way that it should be, although my project manager would do that as well. But then to kind of look at other opportunities that might fall outside of directly promoting and marketing the record. So for instance, it might be that I need to have a conversation with such and such promoter in Europe, because actually right after the record comes out, it's really important that the band are touring in one of their key markets and whatever. So a lot of that kind of work that I'll do will be kind of networking work on behalf of the band, and just trying to kind of plant seeds, have conversations, start to grow something, start to germinate this. And I think that's kind of one of the other areas that maybe isn't widely known, but is sometimes overlooked. But yeah, I mean, for me, really, I'm just here to make sure that I hand everything over to my project manager, and then between myself and them, they will then filtrate that through the rest of the company out to the PR guys, to the digital marketing guys, to the radio plugging team, to the retail sales and retail team, mail order, everything else, and just making sure that this record is set up and delivered in the right way.
Being a part of the Nuclear Blast Group, which is a label that's, renowned and very highly esteemed in the terms of, heavy music, metal music, extreme music. Do you ever feel pressure about having to bring in bands to uphold that legacy?
Yeah, always. Yeah, absolutely. But it's one of those challenges. You either shy away from those challenges or you relish them. And I mean, look, any metalhead, any person in our scene that grew up, listening to metal would have listened to probably half the bands on Nuclear Blast's roster, in terms of legacy, no matter what genre you're into or subgenre you're into. And that, yeah, of course, you could look at it as a double-edged sword, but I try to just only see it as a positive. The guys asked me to join this team because they felt I could add something to it. And yeah, I've spent the last 2 years trying to do my best to absolutely, uphold the legacy and the cultural imprint of, a label of this size. But also, they were very clear with me when they brought me here, is that they want me to help to, define the next generation of Nuclear Blast. And that's what I've been trying to do with, signing things like Malevolence and Bleed From Within. And obviously, the ongoing work that we have with bands like Silosis and even, as I mentioned, In Flames earlier as well, who are kind of finding almost like a resurgence of their stride now. So yeah, so it's a real mix. We need to be mindful of the fact that we have this legacy, but we shouldn't be using it to define what we do in the future either. Yeah. If we do that, we'll end up becoming a museum, where people will be like, oh, do you remember the heady days of heavy metal, and Nuclear Blast is like the label that, did all these things in the, the 90s and the 2000s and whatever. We need to be that, but more than that, because, it will always be that, because the legacy is there now. Yeah. But it's our job to build upon that and help to define what the genre will be and what it will mean for future generations, So it's, shit, actually, that's quite a big task. I've just scared myself now.
I guess in a way, Nuclear Blast is one of the biggest metal labels in the world. Yeah. And I guess, it's you guys and Roadrunner and Century Media and all that other stuff. And in a way, because you're kind of bringing on this new talent and you're kind of reshaping slowly but surely how kind of like Nuclear Blast is with these new bands, and not always having the legacy bands on there, you're kind of shaping what metal is going to become. And in turn, you're also shaping, future festival headliners. Like, as much as I love a band like Metallica, they can't headline forever at Download. You've got to bring in fresher faces. Like, obviously Slipknot had their first Download a few years ago, Avenged Sevenfold had to go, Muse had to go. So I guess, you're kind of setting the stage for the next generation of metal.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I feel I feel it is like my responsibility Do you know what I mean? I feel like it's almost like my vocation now.
Carrying the torch.
Yeah, like 100%. Because I'm one of those people that wants to see, especially some of the homegrown talent that we have here in the UK. 100% want them to be the future headliners. Not just here in the UK, but worldwide. And that's why, you mentioned Download, but that's why I just felt that even though it was in weird circumstances and probably wasn't the ideal scenario from the promoter's point of view, Download Pilot, I thought, was just like became so important, for our scene and our, this next generation, of bands coming through, to give them a taste of, like, again, another band I signed, Conjurer, that played main stage and just absolutely smashed it to bits. And, I was like, man, imagine if this was like, this is like full festival, full main stage in a couple of years' time.
Yeah.
It'll just be insane. So I think, I'm the same as you. I'll always go and watch Iron Maiden at a festival. Like, I love that vibe. I love that vibe to bits, but equally I want to see, and I'm sure they'll want to see it as well. They know that they're not going to, go on forever. And even, all of these recent interviews that I've seen with Ozzy recently, he's already sort of saying, well, I can't do this when I'm dead. And like that, these are the catch lines now. So they're thinking about it. So we need to make sure that we're putting the effort and the time and the resource into building up this, this scene and this next generation. And I really do, see it as almost like a a responsibility really of mine to, try and help to shape that. Because I think if we don't do it and we don't do it properly, we'll end up with this weird vacuum, and the genre will suffer because of it. But I'm pleased to say that I don't see any sign of that. And you mentioned the labels before, they're all doing their bit. There's some really great bands coming through now. You're wearing a t-shirt of one of them, I can see. So it's but that's great. It's all of that stuff is super, super important. And I just want to be here to help to build and to shape that scene.
I mean, a slight tangent. You mentioned Download Pilot, and you probably know more about this than I do. I'm not trying to feed information out of you, but when they've announced these 4 days of download for next year, I thought, wouldn't it be good if the fourth day was like another Download Pilot where we just kind of promote younger UK bands, and it's no clashes either, which is always good. But I'm pretty confident that's not what's going to happen.
I mean, I would love something like that. Yeah, I mean, we hear, we talk to the Live Nation guys, regularly, and that, to be honest, to be fair to them, they're always, looking at different ways to kind of keep us fans happy and give us the festival that we want. It's really important to them. And they're always, talking about new ways and new ideas of how to do the festival. So, who knows? We might see a few changes in the future.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to them. It's just, it's the nature of the beast, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I think, they're there to give the people what they want. So,
you never going to please everyone. And how metal fans can be sometimes. So,
yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for them sometimes, because they're damned if they do and damned if they don't, The second that they do try something new, and they'll book a different headliner and they'll try and mix it up a bit. Yeah. They'll get like a whole ton of backlash from people that are just like, why are you fucking with my festival? So,
can't win.
So it's a hard place to be in sometimes, to try and please everyone. So
what advice would you give to bands who are looking to get signed to a label, or who they know that there's like an A&R scout that's going to come and see them at some point soon? What advice would you give to kind of like help get that outcome that they want?
Yeah, I think just trying to think, I guess just being real and being very honest. We've mentioned a couple of bands that I've signed that are kind of completely new. I will say that is quite rare. So for any kind of new bands out there, of course, like it does happen for sure. But what I would say is like, don't get too hung up if it doesn't happen on like your first EP or even your first album or second album. Sometimes I think honestly, you just need to focus on you and what it is about you that is so great, and what's the thing that like somebody like me or anybody, even just a regular fan out there, what's the thing that they should give a shit about? Like, why should they care about your band? What is it that you're offering that I can't get somewhere else? What's unique about you? what are you presenting? And I think in both of those instances where I've signed something super early on, it's because I haven't heard anything or seen anything that is exactly like that in the current market. Certainly with this new project that we'll announce next year, there's nothing that I see or hear that sounds anything like it right now. And that is quite difficult to do though. Like, it's really difficult to be a 100% unique band, because there's always something that influenced you or somebody that influenced you. So that can be really difficult. But yeah, I would just say just to focus on you, focus on being the best that you can possibly be, writing the best songs that you can possibly write. Think about your live show. Think about the experience. It costs a lot to go to shows now. Ticket prices are getting higher. If people are going to spend their evening with you, what is it that you're doing that's going to make sure that they leave home remembering who you are? Or leave the show, leave for home, I meant. Yeah. Remembering who you are. Like, that's, if you've managed to capture the attention of a few people, make sure whatever it is you're doing, like, they don't forget it. Yeah. I mean, I guess I can't really sort of be any clearer than that. And then on the artistic side of things, I do see and hear a lot of bands that I feel it feels to me like they're in bands just for being in a band's sake. They have some friends that all play music. They all want to hang out. They all want to play. They all want to play shows. They want to play, and that's cool. I'm not trying to take anyone's fun away from them at all. I think everyone should be free to spend their time doing what they want to do. But you also need to be very realistic and honest with yourselves about the situation that you're in and what you're giving, because there are too many bands out there that for me personally, I don't feel have actually got something to say. Either the lyrics are completely generic, or they're throwaway, or the riffs are like 5th, 6th, 7th versions of their favorite bands that have all been watered down twice before already.
Yeah.
And they're now being recycled into, like, with some good production, are being, kind of recycled into this, like, a next generation of metalcore. And I'm like, okay, but if you strip everything away, what are you left with? And it's actually either carbon copies or extremely diluted versions of a lot of things that have come before. So yeah, think about all of those types of things, like, what is it you're doing? Do you actually have something to say? Do you have something unique about you that would, because I'm at the end of the day, an A&R guy is definitely a fan first and foremost. And they're going to want something to stick with them. Maybe I'm only speaking for myself, but that's definitely how I approach it. It's either that singer's got like the most insane, unique voice, or, we mentioned Sleep Token. Who else's voice in metal sounds like that? Not many. So yeah, it's stuff like that, definitely that I'll always be on the lookout for.
And what about people who are looking to pursue a career in A&R or already in the music industry, but want to kind of like take that step towards that area? What would you suggest that they do?
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, I said I do try and help out with stuff like that where possible. I actually ran a course last year, again with BIM, but we did it internationally. So we created an opportunity for basically one BIM student per campus. So we had somebody from Berlin, somebody from Hamburg, somebody from Dublin, and then a person from each of the 5 UK hubs that they have. We set up an application process, and then the guys on the staff there then vetted the people and then submitted some the people that they felt were most relevant, right, for the course. And I just basically did it as a kind of 6-week intensive kind of internship almost, where we went through, like, we ran through the whole gamut of what an A&R does. I set them some tasks, each time, to kind of go through the scouting process, to bring things, to actually critically analyze, what they're bringing to the table, think about how that might look in another market, and all the rest of it. So that was a really good, I think they found it super interesting. So I would definitely recommend to look out for opportunities like that companies like ours are running. Look at the local music colleges and things like that, definitely for opportunities. I think also look out for companies that you are aligned with, and keep an eye on what other opportunities they've got coming up. You might be a really good social media person. You might have a really great background in digital marketing. You might have a great background in copywriting or, something like that. Occasionally, and an opportunity may come up for an internship within the press department within a company or within the digital marketing, side of things. I think we're actually advertising at the moment for a social media intern. So it's things like that. Just like keep your eye and your ear to the ground on opportunities. And just, I've definitely hired a lot of people in the past, not necessarily based on their qualifications,
right,
but actually based on what skills they may have that could be transferable, but definitely hire people based on their knowledge of what we do and their enthusiasm, for what we do.
Yeah.
That is always very, very high up on the criteria when I'm hiring. So yeah, I think just keep your ear to the ground for those opportunities. If you feel like you're not finding any opportunities, another thing that I've always recommended, definitely to the students that I work with, is that if you are a self-starter and you are that way inclined as a person, you can 100% set yourself up as an independent A&R and essentially get out there, start networking with managers, with bands, with other people at other record labels and publishing companies. And actually, if you do your research and you really understand what a band is and where a band might fit, and you're the person that introduces that band to another company or to, whatever, you can build yourself up a really good network and a really good reputation, for doing that. And I would, once you get successful at it, you can start negotiating fees, for that work, almost like a finder's fee. Yeah. So if somebody like another independent A&R may come to me with a band and they can be like, look, I'm representing this band at the moment. If they've got a new record, would you be interested? And if they are part of that negotiation process, whatever, fees we agree on, they may take a percentage of that fee.
Right.
So that could be another super interesting way of getting into it. It's a hard way of getting into it because you will live and die by your reputation. So the second the second an A&R comes to me with something that's pop punk or something that's jazz or whatever, I'm like, okay, that person is off my list now of people I trust. I don't trust their reputation enough because they should know that I'm never going to release a jazz record or a classical record or, a pop record or, whatever.
Yeah.
So, you need to really know your shit to do that kind of thing. But it's definitely, it's definitely another way of getting into A&R.
You briefly mentioned transferable skills. What kind of transferable skills do you say are quite important for a role in A&R?
Microsoft Office. which sounds like a joke, but I'm being serious.
Yeah. You mentioned before the spreadsheets and budgeting and analytics and
absolutely. Like I think the one thing that I would always look for is, do you already have a network? How well networked are you? This is definitely a people business. You need to be able to hold conversations with people. You need to have a good reputation. I think that understanding a wide range of music and not just your own genre, I think can also be really, really helpful. I always worry with people that tell me that they only listen to metal. That for me is a little bit of a red flag for somebody and it's great for somebody, if I'm going to rely on their knowledge for our genre, which can be really helpful. But equally, I think it really helps me if I'm working with somebody that has a well-rounded knowledge, of music and has a wider interest with that. So yeah, I would definitely recommend doing research on stuff. I mean, I was just constantly clawing at liner notes and things like that when I was younger. At one point, I could remember everyone that a certain band had thanked on their thanks list on any given album. But then what would happen is then I would research who the band had thanked, listen to those bands, find out who they had thanked, see if it was reciprocal. and then so you were kind of, and again, it was just it's a really stupid thing. I'm not saying everyone should do that, but that helped me to understand way before the internet was really a proper thing, what a band's network looked like what their group of friends, if a band was thanking another band in their thanks, I was like, okay, it's almost like that mind map thing where you're just like, okay, so you start with this band and you can spider out to all of these other bands and they then spider out to these other bands, and that's where the connections are. And now you understand why those bands go on tour together, and why those bands work with the same producer for their records, and why they maybe share a management company, and like all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's probably too much. I probably killed. I did say I don't want anyone to get into A&R by the end of this podcast. So
you said analytical, and you prove that you're analytical there. So,
but yeah, maybe that's overkill. But for me, if someone can come to me with that kind of knowledge about who that band's connected to, who they work with in the studio, the reason their manager picked them up, and when, and like all of that that sort of stuff really impresses me. I'm like, okay, you've done your research, you've spoken to people, you've heard conversations, you've been a part of that, thing, and you've made the effort. So yeah, that's always super interesting. But yeah, the real tangible skills, I would say, are, you're going to need to know how a budget works. You're going to need to know how to put, spreadsheets together. You're going to need to present business cases and business arguments for essentially giving a band a loan, to make a record. At some point you need to present a plan for what that looks like, and convince someone that usually on your finance team or your MD, that actually this is a band that is worth giving X amount of pounds to make a new record for us. So yeah, you need to have all of those, be really convincing in all of those arguments, and and whatever. So I think it's, going back to where we started right at the beginning, it's very much more than going to shows and spotting bands. That's a great part of it, but yeah, it's literally the tip of the iceberg.
That's come all full circle. I didn't really know much about A&R, to be honest, before this conversation, but now I know a hell of a lot more. So thanks very much for the time, Barley. I do really appreciate it.
No, thanks for inviting me on, and I'm glad I'm always happy to talk about this nerdy stuff. So I'm wondering how many people have made it to the end, and who are now asleep at the end of this podcast. But I just some people think it's glamorous, and certain parts of it are definitely. I can't. It's always fun. Watching bands at festivals, and going to shows, and all of that good stuff. But yeah, I'm always super keen for people to look under the hood and realize it is what it is. So yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity. It's been a great time.
Thanks for sharing. Like I said, I've learned a lot. I'm sure everyone who listens will learn a lot. And I've noticed I've taken up quite a bit of your time now. So before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening, is there anything else you want to say? Anything you want to share? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, no, no final words. I guess, I would say, just if there's anything, I would love to, if I was the age I was when I kind of started all this and I was listening to this podcast, I would just say, if you've got a real passion for music, you want to work in music, just try and do everything you can to make that happen, for yourself. And I think if you stick with it, you'll see some good results. I mean, you're a perfect example of that, of just, making something happen for yourself and staying connected in the scene and doing good stuff. So just get out there and try and make it happen.
Thanks for the kind words, Barley. Again, thank you very much for taking the time. I'll let you go.
Cheers, man. It's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
See you later, man. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider supporting the podcast in any way that you can. We have a Patreon where you can get access to each episode a week early, along with some other perks, a merch store, or you can leave a review wherever you're listening to this. You can also follow me on social media or subscribe to the newsletter, where I'll send out each episode to you via email, along with regular playlists. All of this can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. Thanks again for listening, and remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle.